driverless cars, connected services, new sharing concepts. The automotive industry is in the midst of change. The Internet of Things is opening up a whole new world of possibilities that will push the boundaries of mobility. But what will the future really look like on the roads? One thing is for certain. New technologies are going to revolutionize today's mobility. They will turn the journey into a digitally enhanced experience and connect the vehicle to its surroundings. With Bosch, connected mobility is becoming a reality. More efficient, safer, and more comfortable and convenient.
Mounting exterior automotive parts can be a slow process that requires the use of a noxious chemical adhesion promoter. However, our Tesa ACX primerless line of high-performance double-sided acrylic foam tapes eliminates the need for primers. These tapes quickly achieve a high level of strength and provide the thermal expansion characteristics needed when mounting side moldings, decorative trims, emblems, and other exterior attachment parts. To learn more about the benefits and cost savings of using our Tesa ACX Plus primerless line on difficult-to-bond substrates such as polypropylene EPDM, TPO, and TPE, visit tesatape.com.
Itaú Veículos. Soluções completas, ferramentas modernas, alta tecnologia. Reconhecimento facial, mais segurança e agilidade na compra e venda de veículos. Chat na plataforma digital. Comunicação mais fácil entre a concessionária e nosso time. Open Banking. União entre plataformas e parceiros. Inteligência artificial. Essencial na captura e gestão de leads. Soluções de mobilidade. Com a ConnectCar, seu cliente vai mais longe. Olhamos para o futuro. Queremos sempre mais. Vamos juntos? Itaú Veículos. Nosso negócio é viabilizar o seu.
Estivemos durante todo o mês de outubro na SVWC, o maior evento de transformação digital da América Latina, levando conhecimento em Libras e proporcionando inúmeras oportunidades a toda a comunidade surda. Convidamos você a fazer parte dessa transformação que vai incluir mais de 500 milhão de surdos em todo o mundo. Vamos juntos buscar mais igualdade entre as pessoas. Junte-se a Wise Hands.
Hello everyone, welcome to the third day in the Automotive Business Experience ABX 20. It is a great pleasure to be here with you for yet another morning, and the topic today is going to be mobility. This is the content we have to share with you. It is offered by Itaú. So our thanks go to this great partner of ours, Itaú, which helped us make this meeting possible. This Monday, we announced 10 top startups. And if you're interested in connecting with these startups, the top 10 and another 250, in the automotive sector, we have a great opportunity to offer you, for you to have access to information as to how to participate in what we call speed dates. We started yesterday, and this will go all the way to Friday from 10 to 5. Then you just register in our site, and you will be provided this information. On the site, again, you will find lots of contents we prepared for you. We have a premium page where you will receive e-books concerning light and heavy vehicles, agricultural machines, everything that was prepared for you very carefully. So at any point, you can upgrade your enrollment on the ABX site. You will also find there the summaries of the master classes that were held on Monday and Tuesday. They were excellent, with excellent content, and there will be more today. So do connect with all these summaries. And you will also find more than 30 takeaway talks, podcasts we recorded, which you cannot possibly miss. We hope you contact the platform. Before starting, our special thanks must go to our sponsors, beginning with Itaú, but also to all the other brands that are extremely relevant in our discussion and for our meeting. They are our sponsors and our partners at the same time. And also everyone who helped us co-create this event. We have outstanding voices in the automotive sector that made this meeting possible for us to bring this exceptional material to you. We have also an incredible team in the backstage. We have a huge team making all of this happen to bring you the best content possible. And finally, super special thanks to you, our audience, which is the best audience we could possibly have. And we would like to ask you, please, to participate actively in the construction of this conversation, these ideas, and this exchange will be greatly benefited if you use the chat and interact with us. If you're enjoying it, spread the word, invite your friends and colleagues, and we will continue to improve the experience you have by participating. I will now invite Giovanna. She is going to moderate our conversations this morning. Giovanna, you are most welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Paula. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here for our third day. We are halfway through because we will have today, Thursday and Friday for very important discussions with our guests. I will go straight to the point since Paula has already given several messages to you, and I will invite for our first discussion today on mobility, because after all, the world has been through very important changes with the pandemic, and so I would like to invite to talk about mobility for the new society. I invite Luciana Nicola. She is the Superintendent of Institutional Relations, Sustainability and Entrepreneurship with Itaú Unibanco. Raquel Cardamone, she was the founder of Bright Cities. And Rodney Bernardino, Director of Vehicle Businesses at Itaú Unibanco. Good morning, everyone. Is everything all right with you? Thank you very much for being with us. Well, I will send you my first question already, and in the meantime, I hope our audience start sending in their questions. I would like to start by listening to Rodney, Luciana, and Raquel on the following. What do you understand to be the main changes during this period that we have to take into account when we think about mobility? Rodney, will you answer it, please? Good morning, Giovanna. Good morning, Luciana. It is a pleasure to be here with you to participate in this discussion. I congratulate you for the meeting. It is a very important event for our industry, and we have great faith in this type of exchange. I congratulate you on your job. Well, during this period, this atypical year with lots of changes, adaptations, behavioral changes that are very relevant, all due to the pandemic, well, lots of things changed. And we believe many things are here to stay. Some things may even some things may go back to what they were before, but the new normal will be different, no doubt. One of them in the automotive sector, and it was very clear to us and to all stakeholders in the sector, is digitalization. If our customers had anything against using digital channels to purchase vehicles, this has totally changed. And the players and dealers and car rentals, whoever works with distribution in the automotive sector, also changed their behavior, and they adapted to the technological evolution. We might perhaps take 3 years to do everything we did in this 1 year. Everything was accelerated. And I will give you some figures to show this evident. Before the pandemic, at most 30% of our vehicle financement took place fully digitally, no paper involved in the financing process. Whereas now 85% of our transactions are digital. So they went from 30 to 85%. And in a volume that is higher than in October last year. So the movement has increased, the number of transactions increased, and digitalization increased a lot. We believe this is here to stay. The second thing, and I think it's very clear, maybe Luciana will be able to talk a little more about it, is the issue of using urban public transport as opposed to individual transport. We believe individual vehicles come up on top again due to hygienic conditions and to do with the pandemic. I think there is a movement going on that helps the automotive sector because there will be more demand for vehicles in the market. However, they will be used differently, as we can discuss next. Well, thank you, Rodney. Luciana, could we have your thoughts on the subject? Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to talk about such an important topic. With Bike Itaú, we are following this evolution, and this was happening already before the pandemic, but it was greatly intensified now. I think two factors accelerate this issue. First of all, the issue of contact. When you talk about public transport, you're talking about areas where there is agglomeration. The use of public transport was reduced, and people were favoring individual transport. Another important thing is the model we have today in public transport. Until or there is a vaccine to immunize the population, public transport becomes a complicated means of mobility. There will be an impact on the quantity and quality of public transport, and I think individual cars using low carbon platforms, well, this is something very important here in our analysis. When we look at transportation and mobility, in Brazil we saw lots of smaller cities where the local government encouraged people to use bicycles more. And the public policy found in bikes a safer option during the pandemic. Something nice again is that this is not just to go to work or for leisure anymore. I think bikes are now used to provide services. So you see people who are in isolation, and the delivery of documents or meals are using bicycles. And with Bike Itaú, we noticed this increase. We reduced the number of bicycles to begin with, not to encourage people to come out of the house, but then we started to provide the bicycles for the deliveries that allowed people to stay isolated at home, because services and products could be delivered to them at home. And this type of mobility is more sustainable in any case. Very well. Raquel, what is your take on this context? Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here to talk about intelligent cities. Changes are evident in the social and economic landscape. The digital transformation of cities is very important, and it's interesting to talk about how to manage a matrix that was in place before in the post-pandemic. We shall have to use technology to develop services with greater quality, and mobility is a super important factor when we talk about quality of life. And Luciana was talking about the impact of this mobility after the pandemic, and we have to remember, we have to think of sustainable mobility. We should think about mobility, and we have to remember that legislation nowadays considers energy efficiency very much as well. Mobility is involved in social and environmental aspects that are very important for the discussion. And in smart cities, we have one way to think about cities, and in doing that, we consider the impact on public transport and how that affects the quality of life. So these are my first comments on the issue. Thank you, Rachel. I have another question for you. You, as a specialist in smart cities, you have studied this move around the world. When we think about intelligent or smart cities, We always have a strong connection with technology and with cities that invest a lot in technology. We had Tokyo, for instance, making a big investment for the Olympics that did not take place, but there was much investment. And there are other large cities in the world investing to become a smart city. In your opinion, in what way can we have a Brazilian type smart city? What are we doing about it? This is an excellent question. Yes, smart cities are very much the talk of the town now, and there has been a progress, an integration, and a digital transformation. It's interesting to take into account the issue of preparation of cities to receive a pandemic. Nobody was expecting it, but the integration, the lack of integration in systems, made readiness difficult in the field of health. Now, people have technology, public services have technology, and already some 5 years ago, Brazil started to work on digital transformation. The Ministry of Regional Development is working on the issue. The project is open to consultation and to contributions from the public, and it's very interesting. We are beginning now to monitor what we can do to turn Brazilian cities into smart cities. Technology is important. We make public transport be more efficient by analyzing data, for instance, concerning the displacement of citizens, and the bus stop we can organize buses to arrive on time according to a schedule. So, and the technology can help us there. Brazil has initiatives, but a lot still needs to be done on the topic. But there will also be a renewal, since we have the opportunity to use the budget of cities on development and technologies that will allow for this progress. Nowadays, there is a recommendation. How can we say that a city is intelligent or not? Well, for a city to be smart, good public services have to be provided in every field. It is very important for the city to have strategic planning in every area. If you want to know more about smart cities, there is material available on the subject. Well, this is very interesting, Rachel. It's interesting whenever we talk about mobility in our context, in the automotive industry, it sounds like counterintuitive. We are not all that interested, all that connected to this type of agenda, which is curious because vehicle manufacturers are trying to change their position to become mobility suppliers, but yet they do not engage so intensely in the discussion. And at this point, I would like to ask Luciana a question. Luciana, we see Itaú, which is a bank, a financial institution, becoming involved and engaged in this discussion. So I would like to hear from you. What do you think is the role of Itaú? What is the importance for you to participate in this conversation? Well, when we talk about vehicle manufacturers, they are closer to mobility. But what about the bank? And you have also announced a press conference tomorrow. Could you tell us perhaps what you're going to talk about tomorrow? Well, I will leave this last part to Rodney because there is a very interesting connection between business and what we are going to announce tomorrow. To begin with, urban mobility is an institutional cause because we believe that urban mobility is a matter to be shared by everyone. And we would like to offer more sustainable alternatives to influence the choice of citizens. So we provide information, we inform, we hold discussions. This is important for urban mobility. The next point is, since we believe this affects all, we have a clear view that we don't do this without public authorities because they have this super important role to provide infrastructure. They can participate and they have to understand what they have to create in terms of modes of transport and displacement. We believe all modes of transportation and transport must coexist. When we look at all this from the viewpoint of a smart city, the coexistence also between all the transport modes and walking on foot is very important. And our idea is to bring new projects and studies to the discussion. And public authorities can only be strengthened when the society is active as well. And Itaú participates in both ends. We have the role to participate. We are a major financer of all of this. And in civil society, we have sponsored several projects to promote a reflection on urban mobility. We also gather society to discuss bikes. And we talk about which classes of society can have access, can afford bicycles. Itaú has to be present in all of this. We bring the society to this conversation. It's very important. When we look at public authorities, we have a very frank dialogue with them. We have cities that are very much evolved and others that are still having to mature in mobility. And we also provide information to public authorities to improve on their decisions, such as, for instance, where to invest and how to attract more women to this mode of transportation. And I think we help authorities to listen to the users. Rodney? Well, what Luciana said was excellent. And hooking up to that, we in vehicles look at mobility not just to finance the sector, but also it's a business, it's a cause, and it is a business for us. So mobility is a business opportunity for the automotive and transport sectors. And what we will do tomorrow has to do with that, has to do with the cause, has to do with the purpose, which is to stimulate the transformation power that people have and we want to make possible the access to mobility by people. So our reason to be allows us to make announcements like we will make tomorrow that have to do with sustainable mobility and to do with the automotive sector. We will talk a lot about it tomorrow, and we count on automotive business to give us full coverage tomorrow. This is all I can tell you for today, but it's going to be very interesting, innovative, and showing to what extent Itaú Unibanco is engaged in mobility solutions, especially in the automotive sector. And it will become quite clear that we have this great faith in partnerships. We do not forget our core business, which is financial solutions. But we use that to encourage and to foster the ecosystem for it to continue to work, always with partnerships. I think our video is very clear about it. We even mentioned the issue of an open bank, which is the opening to do things together with partners. There's nothing you can do alone. Together with the ecosystem, we can help promote the ecosystem. Very good, excellent. This view you have on collaboration. Well, as you saw, I did try to get more information from Rodney on what news Itaú is going to announce tomorrow to do with mobility. Well, I am getting several questions here. There is a question on home office. And mind you, we are here to exchange information and questions and doubts and whatever. Also, if you want to share your company's experience, we're here to hold a discussion. A question I have here that I would like Rachel to address first has to do with one of the recent movements we had in Brazil, especially in large cities, the rise and fall of shared scooters and bikes more intensely. We know that the Itaú bikes are around for quite some time now, but we had lots of startups being created and disappearing. So, Rachel, what do you think of it? Do you think this is one step towards a more intelligent mobility, or is it just yet another mode of transportation which is still disorganized? Well, Luciano will be able to talk about it as well. But when we talk about smart cities and we talk about mobility, well, there are new modes. This is a result of the number of people we have, and we have to use technology to help in the process. The arrival of startups was very important, and to show that mobility can perhaps be improved with new solutions. We tested new modes. Some modes will not stay on. But many services helped our connection with public transport. And we can perhaps help to improve the situation of public transport. Now, what was made clear lately was that the use of bikes is very good for your health, and It is positive for the environment, not pollutant. And some old modes were brought back, such as bicycles and scooters, and this was why, really. Luciana, will you add to this? Well, to begin with, bikes are important, no doubt, because we've had Itaú bikes now for 10 years. And when you look at bikes in the world, we use an indicator, bike trips per day, and we monitor that. Rio de Janeiro is the main indicator of bike trips per day. Rio de Janeiro is #1 in the world, but this needs to be considered from the viewpoint of mobility. Bike Itaú has finances 20 to 30% is financed by authorities, and the rest is financed by Itaú. We go through a few economic issues, and they were made worse by the pandemic. But bikes can be shared, like buses, the underground, and trains, where you have a percentage of public finance, and the rest is private finance. We have been studying this for quite some time, and we wanted to understand how public powers, public authorities what they could do in order to promote the use of bikes, like they have credibility in promoting the use of buses. Public authorities and the users, we did a survey in Sao Paulo and in Rio, and as you add bikes to the intermodal transportation matrix, you reduce the cost considerably, and the savings benefit the families. Scooters have an importance in micro mobility, but they still require studies on safety, for instance, for the users, for pedestrians. The public power has participated in this discussion. They understood we still have to study issues related to speed, and we must always benefit the most vulnerable participant in urban mobility, which are the pedestrians. This is the only way we will have a better adoption of active modes of transportation. Well, thank you very much, Luciana. Rodney, I would like to ask you two questions coming from our audience. One of them has to do with home office, and the question is, what do you think of the impact of home offices on the emptying of cities and the impact of that on mobility? We also have a question from Marcelo. He wants to know if Itaú has examples of vehicle financing. Would you like to comment on this? Well, thank you for the opportunities you give me to answer these questions. No doubt home office brought about a change in our users' behavior, a significant change, which of course has an impact on mobility. It is too early to say, however, that we have a full reading, a full understanding of the impact that this will leave behind in society. What we believe is home offices will remain. We believe people will first work at home and do everything they can before they have to actually go physically to the office. We believe there will be a mix. It will also depend on the type of work you do. And this will have an impact on mobility. At the same time, however, I believe this will bring benefits to traffic, but not necessarily will it bring negative effects on transportation. We believe individual transport will continue to be important. Cars, for instance, not just bikes, by purchasing or sharing or leasing cars, we believe the coexistence between modes of transportation will remain. Well, the pandemic reduced traffic in large cities, but it encourages people to live far away from their offices, and therefore they require vehicles to come and go from their distant homes to the office. So maybe the profile of vehicles will change. The vehicle that used to be purchased before the pandemic. The way people travel will perhaps change. And we have to take into account that Brazil is immensely large. There are several Brazils inside Brazil, and there are different circumstances in a downtown, in the interior of the country, where there are cities where, or towns where the ratio is one car for every 4 inhabitants. So there is a possibility for the growth of the salary mass in Brazil, and lots of people are still dreaming of their first car. So all of this is going to coexist in the medium term. We, as a financial institution, as a relevant player in the market, we have to be prepared for everything, whatever happens. Shared mobility, rental mobility, purchased mobility. We have to be prepared for everything. Now, concerning the second question, yes, we do have initiatives in everything related to mobility. You will see, well, e-railing was mentioned, the issue of Uber and 99, and we participate in this process of transport using applications such as Uber. Well, we participate there, providing the means of payment. Because the user may need a car to rent a car and or buy a car, and we participate as a financial institution in the whole ecosystem, in the whole automotive ecosystem. and we are monitoring every trend in the market. Very well. Another question coming from Leilani. And thank you for being with us. Leilani says that historically, mobility was always impacted by pandemics and epidemics. And we have recent examples, for instance, in Asia. So, Raquel, I would like you please to talk about in what way COVID is different from what we had in the past. Well, the pandemic makes us think again about certain processes because it has a social impact and even an effect on the mindset. COVID arrived very quickly and very strong. We didn't have time to prepare for that, so we ought to consider how to have cities prepared to a sudden impact like this. We will need some time to analyze and understand how it is the whole world is working. And there is fantastic progress in technology because we are providing new technologies for people to solve the problems created by the pandemic in education, in professional activities, and the whole thing has an impact on the structure of cities. At the same time, as the pandemic has a very big impact due to the dissemination, we also have a special solutions in agriculture provided by technology, and their success helps us overcome part of the problems created by the pandemic. Well, we are coming to the end of the time we had for this chat. We still have lots of questions, and it's very interesting. People are exchanging information and they are asking questions from each other, and so this is very much the idea. I would like to have a very short round of questions, 30 seconds for each speaker, but by asking a very relevant question. When we talk about motility, Luciana mentioned how important bikes were in the delivery services. Maybe we hadn't thought of deliveries by bike very clearly before. I would like to ask you the following. For this future with mobility, for this future to be accessible by everyone, not just by people who are wealthier, what should be done, do you think? Hooking up to the question, let's see, what is the purpose of the bank? It is to stimulate the transformation power of people. And we as a business focusing on mobility, the idea is to give people access to mobility solutions. When we talk about giving access, we're talking about everyone, regardless of income or social class or region or anything. And we work for this purpose to make access to mobility solutions possible in just any mode of transportation. This is why it's very good to work with Luciana and with Bright Cities It's very interesting to work with them. And this, by talking about it, is how we make the access possible for everyone. Thank you, Rodney. What about you, Luciana? What's your point of view? Well, hooking up to what Rodney said, I think it is the Itaú spirit. One way for us to have access by all economic classes. I think we should offer the right modality in the right place. I think this is very interesting. We have to understand what the needs are in a central hub in the city. You have to think where you have more jobs being offered. You need to have mobility getting there. And nowadays, bikes work very well in downtown areas, and you have 2/3 of the users who don't live in that area where they use the bike. And also, we had a very low adhesion when we took bikes to the outskirts of town. We have to analyze carefully what modality is already available in order to go in with some complementary modality. When we talk about smart cities, we talk about sustainable and resilient cities. People think that technology and smart cities don't have to do with that, but it does. They do have to do with smart cities. Mobility, services, apps, all of this makes all of these services more accessible by the population. Well, thank you very much for your participation, for the fact that you were willing to contribute and to share with us your ideas. I thank you all very much. Thank you once again. No, this was a great opportunity for us to participate in this very important discussion. Well, thank you all. From now on, Pedro Courtney is going to moderate, and before that, we'll see a little video.
Quando a gente escolhe a bicicleta, novos caminhos se abrem. É mais rápido, não polui. E no caso do Jefferson, que trabalha com o corpo, pode ser inspiração. Ei, Jefferson, tudo bem, meu?
Tudo bem. Eu amo estar pedalando, sabe? Como eu utilizo muito a bicicleta do Itaú, a minha mobilidade está feita com a bicicleta.
Tem um sabor assim de solução.
Sim, a bicicleta é muito mais ágil, né? O vento bate no rosto, o cabelo fica um pouco mais para trás, assim. Eu transito muito a questão de trabalho, faculdade, mais centro, zona sul. Então o trajeto é maravilhoso. Já chego praticamente aquecido para minhas aulas de balé na faculdade. Então isso já traz uma predisposição muito boa, né? Começar o dia assim não tem preço. A minha vida está toda entrelaçada à arte, a movimento. E a bicicleta vem como um refúgio de liberdade e de pensamento, né? Então me traz uma imagem de um tecido, uma agulha, uma linha e você vir simplesmente tricotando pela cidade. Essa busca contínua da inspiração.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us. ABX 20 continues today talking about mobility. Everything we did Monday and Tuesday can be found in our gateway, ABX 2020. We shall now move on with our agenda, and we will then talk to Andre Stein. He is the president of EVE, and he will tell us about the plans they have and what EVE's proposal is for urban mobility in the air. Are you there, Andre? Yes, I am. Pedro, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to share our views with you and how we are thinking to build this vision for the future, what we are doing to build this world and bring more options to mobility. I know you have a short presentation to show us. You can show the slides. We will change them for you, and you let us know. Well, the idea is to share with you this view of the future. I will tell you about EVE and about Embraer X. Embraer is well known in Brazil, does need to be introduced, and more than Brazil, it is a world power in aviation. Nowadays, every 10 seconds, an Embraer plane takes off somewhere in the world, and they've been developing aircrafts for over half a century. Now, a few years ago, Embraer X was created. The idea is to be like a nursery of ideas in Embraer, to bring this startup mentality to Embraer, to join all their experience with this new disruptive startup mentality. Now, the third idea was to focus on needs. You must have seen this pyramid of cities. And nowadays, connectivity became one of the basic needs of human beings. People are used to being fully connected all the time in a simple and cheap manner. You have 5G, 4G. There's lots of technology behind all this connection, but people just see that they get connected from A to B. And our mission now is to bring all this technology to the physical world. Now, think about this same transformation to the physical world, people and things going from A to B in a simple, integrated and cheap manner. Think of what already happens nowadays. You can come from Europe to Brazil in a few hours. You fly over the ocean, you change continents in a few hours, and then you get to the airport, and it takes another few hours to get to where you're going in that city. So we can improve perhaps the benefits of aviation for more people. There is a need to improve urban mobility, and in São Paulo you will have understood what this means. And people spend a huge time in traffic jams, and this is not acceptable. Even if we make lots of conferences and if we have more home office and so on, traffic jams continue because cities continue to grow. And for this to improve, we have to think about it in a sustainable manner. We must always think about new solutions to get them to bring us improvement on the current situation. The idea of flying over traffic to go from A to B and then a trip that would possibly last 2 hours will now last 10 or 15 minutes. This is not a new idea. Santos Dumont flew over Paris already a century ago, but the idea is to make this feasible and available at a much larger scale. I don't mean to say that air mobility will totally solve the problem of traffic, but if you have to take a plane that day and there is a traffic jam, or if you have to go to your son's birthday party or something, well, if you can use this type of mobility. For instance, if we look at Brazil, think of the people who spend more than 45 minutes in traffic each day and who could use this type of solution once a week or once per month. That is already 2 million people nearly in São Paulo. 2 million people could benefit from this type of option in the short, medium and long term. When we talk about solutions, we often think about the vehicle. But it's more than that. We have to look at the ecosystem. We have to think of integrated solutions. As I said, solutions need to be integrated. And Embraer X was created to accelerate businesses. And Embraer X consolidates all the solutions we were thinking of to look at the whole ecosystem. For instance, São Paulo has one of the main, the largest number of helicopters, but you cannot overfly São Paulo in your helicopter because there is an excessive number and very few can be admitted. So based on that, we can have a customized solution for the issue of urban flights. We have to think increasingly that mobility is a service. Everything is a service. So everything to do with services the service side of it needs to be created along with the equipment. We are also developing an aircraft that can take off and land vertically based on the knowledge Embraer already had. So one of the first things we consider is necessary to differentiate this new urban mobility is to have a vehicle that will be affordable. Economically, people should be able to access that. It's not going to be a vehicle for only a few. It won't be the full solution for urban mobility, but some people will use the system. It has to be affordable to everyone, and whoever breaks a leg or is on a wheelchair or something, all these things have to be taken into account. Also, because if you want to replace your 2-hour trip by another one that will last 15 minutes, you have to have a quick turnaround for this aircraft. So all of this is taken into account. This is one of the pillars of the vehicle we're developing. And besides, considering the user, this vehicle has to take into account society as a whole. It's going to be 100% electrical, low noise. So the fuel is going to be cheaper, and there is going to be low noise. Nobody wants very noisy air vehicles anymore. And it will not be heard in the noise of the city. So it is an efficient and also quiet way of flying. It is important to have peace of mind. And an important example is to use a system of flight that will be more efficient and more relaxed. And we need to focus on technology where it adds value. Technology is not there just for the sake of technology. It needs to have a function. It must be simple for the user, simple for the operator, in order to be efficient. And it's nice when we talk about new vehicles with vertical takeoff and landing. They have to be physically simple. So the solution we adopted has a vertical takeoff system and another system to move forward. So you minimize the number of soft parts. And another important point is you can see an autonomous future. We have to be sure that it is safe. It's very important. So you start with a pilot and you start introducing autonomous aviation, but it needs to be prepared for that. Well, this is the beginning. This is what I had to share with you. It's only a beginning, just to put people on the same page. But I would now like to open the floor for your questions in order to have some interaction here. I will try to answer to the extent I can. Look, Andrea, I grew up watching the Jetsons, and it was a technological abstraction for me to think that all that would be possible one day, as in fact Eve proposes. I would like to know something from you. This proposal of urban transport, what is the distance between technological abstraction and reality? When do you think this will be a mature proposal? Well, at some point during this decade, we are evolving, and one thing we have leveraged in Embraer is that we took all our aeronautical know-how and all the parameters, and we use that in developing this vehicle. This is not something for the faraway future. No, it's going to happen soon. And why is it different from the Jetsons? Well, as you see, we don't have anti-gravity. But electrical mobility, for instance, is a reality in several other areas. However, the level of maturity is sufficient for us to make this development. Well, you mentioned something, and I would like to clarify this. Just any aircraft needs a flight plan, and we have a limit for the number of aircraft that can fly over Sao Paulo because there are no air roads. So I would like to know how this can be solved. And I add to that a question coming from Elio Bueno in our audience. He wants to know, what is the communication like? Will there be a central control site, or will there be flight plans, or what? Well, one of the projects we have is specific for urban air traffic, precisely to develop that. This type of solution, well, we cannot create that on our own. We have to engage with authorities and other players to understand where the needs are. Well, different countries will have different solutions. There is not a one-size-fits-all. We can consider the environment. We will also begin with aircraft with a pilot. We will have to consider integration with other types of air flights. Maybe the new drones that are appearing as well. Everything needs to be integrated. And if you're curious about more information, we sent a white paper. We published a white paper last year talking about the path to get to a market with a large volume in the future. And we discuss various solutions. And you can also go to the Eve site, and you will find all these solutions in greater detail. The idea is to start using pilots and existing solutions, and we should leverage that instead of beginning from scratch. Well, we have two questions, or the same question from two people. They would like to know what is the flying capacity before you have to recharge the battery. Well, this is one of the main requirements. We see the need is for 100 kilometers. You can cover the whole of the city of Sao Paulo, maybe a little more. This is the requirement. 100 kilometers covers just any urban area in the world. Now, when you think about electrical mobility, it's not ready yet for you to carry 100 people for 5,000 kilometers like a plane can. But you can take a few people over a short distance. Well, you said yourself that in the beginning the idea is to use a pilot. I think there are many safety issues involved. And in case I go into an air taxi with anyone driving it, this could be an important issue. We know that a pilot needs years of practice to qualify. In what way will we find all the required pilots? This is an excellent point. And in answer to your first comment, well, the perception of users was one of the first things we investigated. The need to be sure of the pilot is one of the main issues. Most people are scared of flying even if there is a pilot. And we must always work on the flight to become increasingly safe. This is our main goal, is to turn aviation increasingly safe all the time. You mentioned the need for commercial pilots. Well, this is typical of aviation. There are 2 points. The flight must be as easy as possible. One of the things we did, for instance, is that we developed our flight simulator, and this is one mechanism. Further on, we're going to accelerate the program of flight tests. All of this simulation helps to accelerate and improve the man-machine interface. We reduce the need for learning and experience, so we use the simulator with super experienced pilots, Embraer pilots, and with people who never piloted any plane, in order to help develop something that is very intuitive, very simple. Another point we have to think of is the issue of training. How can we train using technology resources? For instance, using platforms, using apps to help in the training of pilots. For aviation, it all started with mechanics helping to facilitate training, and the tools as well that can help minimize difficulty and can help create a new level of entry that will be simpler once we move on to commercial aviation. I have a question here from Ricardo Suzuki. So, what is Eve's plan to provide the vehicle, the service, or both? Well, the answer is both. What we want, and this is one of the main points in our DNA, what we want is to offer complete, encompassing, and integrated solutions. So, an operator will buy the vehicle and develop his operation, and we will have to go all the way to the other extreme, because solutions are not always going to be isolated. Sometimes we will have to develop solutions ourselves, but we want to offer a whole range of solutions. Always thinking about the land side of things as well. You may have a partner on land. Well, our conversation could last for hours. It's very interesting to look at the future in this way. It is still somewhat abstract for us, but it's something that's getting here, as you mentioned. Well, what is, in your opinion, the horizon for urban air transport? 10, 20, or 30 years? How many urban air vehicles will be circulating in the skies of Sao Paulo, in your opinion? Well, this is a nice way to look at things. You have short term beginning in the coming years, and this will escalate. And this is the beauty of urban mobility. Escalation is simpler because you tackle one city at a time. Besides the vehicles, you need the skyports, you need to have places for the vehicle to land and take off. You have to work on regulations. So in 2035, we believe there will be like 1,000 vehicles. We will take a while to get there, but this is what we consider will be the growth. Well, thank you very much, Andre, for being with us today, bringing us a different look on mobility. Mobility on top, right? Well, I thank you once again, and even the fact to be here in an automotive event shows a little what we believe in, the integration of modes of transportation. Modes have to align and create integrated solutions. So it was a pleasure to follow this event. I have learned a lot. And if you want to know more about Eve, you can go to our site, eve.com. You can communicate with us, and we'll be delighted to answer your questions in the future. Thank you. Have a nice day, Andre. Very well, everyone. Let us continue with the morning program. We shall now hear from the United States, Shailene Bhatt. He is the president and CEO of ITS America. He is in the United States, and very soon, when he starts speaking, you will hear our translator. And when he speaks there, he will hear English, Portuguese translated to English. Shailene, is this the right pronunciation? Shailene or Shalin?
Shailene Bhatt. Yeah, no, it's great.
He will talk to us about solutions after the pandemic. Thank you very much for being with us, Shailene.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. 2020 has certainly been a very interesting year. My job used to be going around the world and the United States to talk about mobility and transportation. Last year I was in Singapore. The year before that, we were in Copenhagen for our ITS World Congress. The year before that was in Montreal. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. And so we were very excited when we got this invitation. Unfortunately, I'm unable to be with you in Brazil, but I think there are a lot of parallels with the challenges that Brazil is facing, that the United States has passed. And so I'm really excited today to talk to you from Washington, D.C. So your conference theme is the vision of how we can all create safer, greener, smarter transportation and smart city systems coming out of this pandemic crisis, and the role for tech for getting us there. I can very much relate to the theme of your conference because ITS America, our vision as an organization is for a better future transformed by intelligent mobility, one that is safer, greener, and smarter. So before I came to ITS America, I was the minister or official of two state departments of transportation here in the United States, of the Colorado Department of Transportation, as well as the Delaware Department of Transportation. And I was also a senior official at the U.S. National Department of Transportation. And in all of my time, I have always said that departments of transportation exist for two reasons: to save lives and to make people's lives better. And I think that's what all of us are doing in this industry, whether it's the automotive field or infrastructure, is how, what choices do we make? What investments do we make? And how do we harness technology in order to, create better outcomes? I was listening to the previous speaker from Embraer talking about this new urban air mobility. And that's something I'll talk about in a bit because it is an exciting time and there are new options that are coming. But I think from the first place that we start when it comes to technology is that all of these should benefit people, right? The technology is the secondary part. It must be the benefit of people. So when we think about the automotive industry, one of the technology advances has been this idea of automatic emergency braking. It's cool that the car stops itself, but what is much more important is that if you have a distracted driver, that a car is paying attention and can detect, somebody in the roadway and will not hit that person. So, we have big challenges here in the United States. We have lots of questions that we'd like to answer, and I'll spend a few minutes talking about the challenges we have and how that also can be applied in Brazil. So I started with safety. I actually got started in transportation because when I was a child growing up, there was a really bad car crash near my hometown. And I remember that crash because there were 5 children from one high school that were killed in one car. But in the other car was two parents going home to their family. And I just remember being very scared as a child that my parents could do something very normal, like get in a vehicle and go out for the afternoon and then never come home. And in the United States, we lose nearly 37,000 people on our roadways across the United States every year. And that number has been, it's gone up a bit, it's gone down a bit, but that number has been pretty steady. And if you think about it, that's like losing like a Boeing 747 crashing every couple of days. And if that happened, we wouldn't accept that. I know in Brazil, the fatality rate increased last year, and distracted driving is the biggest single factor, linked to about almost 40% of fatal incidents in 2019. And, we talk a lot about technology. In some ways, and we talk about distracted driving. In some ways, driving is becoming the distraction from what people want to be doing. People don't want to pay attention to the road. They want to be on their phones. They want to be seeing how many likes they're getting on Instagram or Facebook, or, wondering if their dating app is working. And so, I think that it is critical that we apply technology so that we can help change what is the biggest cause of crashes in the United States, where we know that about 90% of crashes are caused by human error, right? A distracted driver, a drunk driver, a drowsy driver. So these are places that we want to increase safety. So we have made great strides in roadway design and technology in the last 40 years, but there's still a lot of work to do. When we think about how do we reduce fatalities, it's not just about cars crashing into other cars. What we're also seeing in the United States, and we talk about, how do we use tech to improve cities, we're seeing a lot of vulnerable users of the system being killed now. Bicyclists, pedestrians, motorcyclists. And again, that is consistent with distracted driving being a real issue. And so what we want to ensure is that if there's technology that's available, I talked about automatic emergency braking. One of the technologies that we're really excited about in the United States is V2X. It used to be called V2V, vehicle to vehicle. Now we call it V2X because it's vehicles communicating with everything around it. So the vehicle can talk to the traffic light so it knows that the light's about to turn red, so you don't drive through a red light. The vehicle can detect a pedestrian or a cyclist So if somebody's going to run through an intersection without looking, the vehicle can know that they're there. If a fire truck or an ambulance is on their way to a crash and is driving at a high rate of speed, it can broadcast to other vehicles around it to say, hey, I am coming through at a high rate of speed on an emergency visit. Please don't hit me. And so I think that from a safety perspective, this idea of connecting vehicles to infrastructure, initially through V2V and V2X, next through 5G networks, is really going to transform, I think, the way that we experience cities. It's going to allow us to pair safer cars with new micromobility options to help reduce the crash rate as well as the fatality rate. So we're really excited about that potential. So I talked about safety. The next part of our vision for a better future is a greener piece. And so, we know that in the United States, about 28% of our greenhouse gas emissions comes from the US transportation sector. I spoke at the climate talks in Cancun a few years ago, and at that time, that 28% was about 30%. So we've made a little bit of improvement, but when we think about the transportation sector, it's not just cars, it's also trucks. And so, we're really excited about the prospect of electrification because we know this is an important part of our tools to help reduce climate change and the impacts of climate change. Also air quality. I was in Mexico City last year and there was just fantastic traffic jams. And it's the same in Los Angeles, it's the same in Houston. And when those cars and trucks sit for minutes and hours on end, they're putting off a lot of pollution, a lot of carbon dioxide, a lot of ozone, ground level ozone gets created. And so we know we can improve air quality in cities if we can reduce emissions from diesel trucks and cars. And so Brazil's greenhouse gas emissions is, I believe, about 15.4%. But I'm sure that, that is something that is a focus in Brazil as well, but also urban air quality. So one of the things that we are excited about in the United States, and I actually chair an external advisory board for the U.S. Department of Energy, is this prospect for a large-scale electrification of our fleet. Electric cars have been around for a while, but because of range anxiety, this idea that the vehicle won't get very far and then you run out of battery. Well, battery technology has improved a lot, and we're also very excited about building out new infrastructure so that even if your battery doesn't last as long as it needs, and the last speaker talked about a 100-mile or 100-kilometer radius, then you have infrastructure in place to charge your vehicle and put electricity into your car so that it can continue running. So we are very excited about electrification. We're also excited about the internal combustion engine becoming even more efficient and improving fuel efficiency standards. And we know that this is a key area in the automotive industry, but we've made some great strides over the years in terms of reducing emissions through things like catalytic converters, more efficient engines. And so that is something that we're very excited about in terms of really making a big difference in how we live in our cities without all of this pollution. And then, we talk about this smarter piece, right? So safer, greener, and smarter. I am quite certain that in Sao Paulo and Rio, there are fantastic things to see. But in order to go see them, you probably have to sit in fantastic traffic jams. It's very similar to what we experience in the United States. Americans spend, on average, about 100 hours a year sitting in traffic. I think that we looked it up. Rio had the second worst traffic in the world last year, with residents spending almost double that, 190 hours, in traffic. And if you think about that, we can imagine a future in which, whether it's connected vehicles or autonomous vehicles or new deployments of transit, instead of spending 190 hours sitting on a bus or in a car, you can make that into productive time. And we're very excited about increasing connectivity so that instead of wasting all of that time, we're able to create productive time, and I think, again, that 5G development will be incredibly important. On the micro mobility front, when we think about that, we think about scooters, e-bikes. These are another way in which we're able to start moving more people. One of the challenges the United States has faced is this idea of, our roads are fixed. There's not a lot of space. So how do you move more people and goods through there? Well, I think that, if we can put more people on these bikes and scooters, pair that with transit, it's an opportunity to move more people, move more cars, and move the system more efficiently. Smart transportation technology played a key role. I really enjoyed the sights of Rio hosting the 2016 Olympics. And I know that as part of that, moving people all around the city and the region was incredibly important. I know that Rio doubled the length of transit systems and extended metro lines. In Los Angeles, we're going to have the ITS World Congress in LA in 2022. In 1984, when they hosted the Olympics there, the city debuted its first traffic management center to help move traffic more efficiently. So it's key when you get mega events like the Olympics or other things, moving traffic in a more intelligent manner is a critical piece. And then the last piece, the last speaker was speaking about Embraer and this new era of urban air mobility. We are going to have to figure out, how do you add this fourth dimension of transportation now, right? So for the last 100 years, we've been talking about cars and trucks on the road. Now we're talking about urban air mobility, delivery of passenger and freight by drones, vertical takeoff vehicles. And so, we're going to have to figure out how we manage that traffic, both on the surface and in the air, and then work with existing airspace, because obviously we don't want these drones interfering with commercial air traffic. And so this is something that, technology is going to play a key role in as we move forward. When it comes to COVID-19, I think we are still in the early stages of knowing what the future is going to look like. Until we get a vaccine, it's premature to say that we're never going back into offices or everybody will always work from home. I think what the pandemic has shown us is that I am able to present in Brazil without traveling there, but I also lose out on the connectivity of meeting people. And, human beings are social creatures. We like to visit. In businesses, there's a lot of work that takes place in offices that you can't recreate. And so we just don't know yet what the future will hold. I think there's a couple of elements that we need to consider. I think that transit safety is incredibly important. We're going to make sure that we invest in transit in the United States, because we need to make sure that is available for people to use as a safe mode of getting around. So one of the things that we're very focused on in the United States right now are contactless payment options. So instead of getting in and putting money into, handing money to somebody or putting it in, it's just through your phone or through a smart trip card, and then integrating that payment to your credit card. So it's seamless. It's one step. Transit systems in the United States have instituted new cleaning protocols, including the use of ultraviolet technologies in New York City. We're also seeing these microfibers that are being applied to high-touch surfaces that are antimicrobial. And so, I think there are a lot of things that we can do with technology to make sure that transit is very safe. Another thing that we need to make sure is that we understand that there's probably going to be an impact where some people decide to drive in their cars while safety is still a concern. And so we need to model traffic scenarios that understand, if we were here at traffic before, what happens if the traffic goes to this level? What happens if the traffic, drops down again? And be very flexible as we move forward. And so, I think we're still figuring out what the world will look like after this is all done. I think the things that I'm fairly confident of is that people are still going to be driving in their cars. It might be electric cars. It might be a car that's connected to other vehicles. But for the automotive industry, in the short term, I think it is full speed ahead in the United States. We're seeing record car sales here. But I think that the future, both for passenger vehicles, for freight, and for mobility, is one that it's not 20 or 30 years from now. It's 5 years from now. It's 10 years from now. We're going to see massive, we're already seeing it, but we're going to continue to see massive transformation because, again, technology is really exciting, but what transportation is all about is moving people, moving goods. And to the extent that we have technology that makes people's lives better, then we should do more of that. We should not focus on technology just for technology's sake, because I think it's incredibly important that we make sure that people are at the center of everything that we do. And then last piece, I'm hopeful that you'll invite me back at some point, or I'll be able to travel to Brazil. We'll all be able to travel. And I would invite all of you in 2022 to come to the ITS World Congress in Los Angeles. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I'll stay tuned for any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Shailing, we thank you for being with us, and I would like to remind you that this whole discussion was made possible by our partners from Grid Exhibition, who made contact with Mr. Bath from ITS, and who was kind enough to come and share his ideas with us about more intelligent transportation. I will start asking you questions coming from the audience. First of all, I would like you please to tell us more about the notion of V2X, a vehicle to everything. How distant are we from making this integration possible between the car, the infrastructure, pedestrians, and other vehicles? When do you think it will be possible to have cars communicating with everyone and everything?
Yeah, so just on the Reed Exhibitions piece, yeah, we've got a great partnership with Reed, and I'm glad that they were able to connect us. V2X is already here. So in the United States, there practically in every state across the country, there are V2X deployments today. So cars talking to the infrastructure. In Wyoming, there is a stretch of the interstate where trucks are connected. So in a winter storm, which I guess you don't worry too much about in Brazil with snow and ice, but in a winter storm, if there's a big crash, instead of having all these trucks coming at high speed and crashing into the back of the existing accident, trucks are talking to each other already. In Tampa, Florida, there's a big deployment around getting vehicles to talk to each other. In New York City, we have cars and buses already talking to each other to operate the system more effectively. So it's not a question of when do you see it happening, because it's already happening. It's a question of getting more deployments. What you need are these radios in the car. And that's the part where there was a technology question for a couple of years. Now we're seeing more CV2X deployments and a lot of companies and car manufacturers moving in that direction. In Europe, there's, and in the United States, there's still DSRC being deployed. And so, that's an unknown question, but I think that the critical piece, Ford actually did a demonstration at our ITS America annual meeting in Washington, D.C. last year, where they had a pedestrian with their cell phone that was detected by a vehicle. And that's using CV2X. And as you know, we moved to 5G. What is absolutely critical for these communications is that you have dedicated spectrum, or this frequency for these safety messages to communicate unimpeded. And so that's what we're very focused on. And we would tell everybody in the world that you want to make sure that if you've got dedicated spectrum set aside for these communications, you should preserve that, because the demand is only going to grow.
Very well. We have another question coming from our audience. O'Neill de Souza would like to know the following. At what stage is the development of smart roads to accommodate for the circulation of driverless cars? At what stage is this development?
Yeah, so the infrastructure is interesting. About 4 years ago, when I was running the Colorado Department of Transportation, we had what was known as the world's first commercial autonomous vehicle delivery, where a truck went 100 miles on the interstate with a driver in the sleeper berth, not at the wheel. So it was technology driving it. And one of the things that was so important for that deployment was the striping along the road, because that is what is critical for autonomous vehicles. It's one of the things that their sensor platforms need to be able to see. So when we think about infrastructure, it can be, complicated things like sensors along the roadway and roadside units broadcasting information. It could be as simple as paint on the road. And so I think that, at least in the United States, most of the manufacturers for the deployments that are out there right now and you see a lot of pilots and autonomous vehicles out there in our cities, they're being designed for the existing infrastructure. And so I think it's a combination of infrastructure, vehicle environments, but I think the bigger challenge is we're about 95, even 98% of the way, to the end of figuring out how to do driverless cars. The last 2 to 3% is the really challenging part. So you can do almost everything, but I was in Beijing 2 years ago, and I was looking down from this window, and there's like 8 lanes of traffic merging into 3, not a lot of lanes, very.
There seems to have been an interruption. Can you hear me, Shailin?
I can.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Sorry, where did I
Could you
get
resume?
cut off there?
You were talking about Beijing and 8 lanes turned into 3 lanes. Can you?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Technology is not all the way reliable, right? So this is a perfect example of autonomous vehicles. If you're going to rely on technology, you have to have redundancy in place. So if that connection suffers an interruption, there's another sensor platform, LiDAR, cameras, whatever it is that.
We lost Shailin again. I will try
Yeah.
and reconnect. Are you there, Shailin?
I am. So
Yeah.
if it cuts off one more time, I apologize.
It will be some time before we get to a V2X, right? If we have the same connection speed.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But lastly, I was just trying to say, there's a human element. You can do the infrastructure, but you have to have human driver behavior factored in as well.
Well, Shailin, let us move on to the next question. It has to do with connection. Let's talk about 5G. It is essential to make communication possible between vehicles and the infrastructure at large speed and so on. There is a big battle in this field. The US don't want to use Chinese technology. Maybe the next administration will agree, but so far it's not the case. In Brazil, there are doubts as well as to what technology we'll use. Now, in the opinion of ITS America, what should be the access to 5G? Or what would be the best solution for transport?
Yeah, I think that if there's one thing we've learned from the pandemic, connectivity is critical. So here in the United States, I'm able to work like this because we have high speed connectivity. There's all kinds of kids in schools who, if they didn't have connectivity, they wouldn't be able to go to have any learning this year. And one of the challenges we're finding, and this is important with 5G, is we have a digital divide where there are some kids in places where there's great connectivity, they have a device and they're able to learn. And in some parts, there's no connectivity and kids are having to like go sit in a parking lot in a car to access a Wi-Fi signal. And so, when we were talking about earlier the vertical takeoff and landing vehicles and somebody paying to fly above the traffic, that's not going to be the experience for everybody. And so we want to make sure that with technology advancement, it's working for everybody, not just a select few. So when it comes to 5G, I think that another challenge that we have, the United States, big country, Brazil, big country, 5G investments tend to happen in cities. But what happens if you get outside of that city? Then what's the economic model for building the small cell towers and outfitting all of that infrastructure? This is where roads can play a good, trunk line or way of getting the infrastructure out into the countryside. But that's part of our challenge is if you build a car that is reliant on 5G technology in order to be able to achieve level 4 and 5 autonomy, what happens to that vehicle if you lose 5G? And the last part on just the whose technology or where will it go, I think that one thing we want to be very aware of in every country is cybersecurity and making sure that as all of these systems become connected, that nobody can play a major role in disrupting that because the 5G network is not secure. I think that is the big challenge. And you could imagine the chaos in Houston or Los Angeles or Sao Paulo or Rio if suddenly a cyber attack took down all of the signals, or all of a sudden your vehicle that was using this 5G network was suddenly doing things it wasn't supposed to do. That could cause chaos. And I think that is the security aspect that everybody should be very focused on.
Shailene, I have a question about smart cities now. All over the world, we see public state investment to build smart cities. We see this in Dubai, Singapore, and others as countries that started to build their intelligent transport infrastructure. In Brazil, we have huge cities full of problems, and we would love to have some intelligence here to improve the existing conditions. What we don't have, however, is money to invest in smart cities. Do you think it is possible to build smart cities without government investment?
Yeah, so a lot of the cities that you talk about are leading cities, and I've been to all of them. It is, obviously it's a lot easier to solve some of these challenges if you've got a big amount of money to invest. But I think that if I just focus on the traffic piece, when I was in Copenhagen, they were very proud of the fact that I think something like 60 or 65% of trips in Copenhagen are done by bicycle. Now, people say, well, it's because Europe, they're very bicycle friendly. It's a small place. They're able to do it. But in the 1950s, Copenhagen was full of cars, full of traffic, and very choked in many ways. And they decided that they wanted to not have cars choking all of these plazas. So today, these plazas that are beautiful places where you can go and walk around used to be parking lots. So they said, no more cars parking in here. I know this is an automotive conference, so I'm not saying we need to ban cars, but we need to be intelligent in the choices that we make. And I would say that the smartest city is the one that starts with people at its foundation. So if you say, look, we don't have a lot of money, but these are the outcomes that we want. We want lower pollution. We want less traffic. We want safer streets. I think that the one area where you can do and make big strides relatively cheaply, and I say that in comparison to like building huge infrastructure investments of rail and roads, is I think what technology enables is us to understand the data. So big data is allowing cities across the world to get insight into how their people use their system. So whether it's understanding driver patterns, it's understanding crash data, it's mirroring up transit deployment with actual usage, figuring out through sensors where people are sitting in traffic longer and using traffic light systems to move the traffic more efficiently. I think that this, again, it costs some money, but compared to building a brand new transit line, it's much cheaper. The return on investment in technology right now, I think could allow places like Brazil, who are like, we want these better outcomes. The key is you need to identify those outcomes, invest in the technology to track your output, and then make sure that you're actually moving towards your goal, not moving further away.
Shailene, we're coming to the end of our chat, and I would like to ask you one last question related to the future of mobility. If we summarize many things that you brought to us, what is your view on mobility for 2030? What do you think it will be like?
Yeah, I think that in 10 years, so 10 years seems like a long time, but it's not. Just 10 years ago, we didn't have Uber. We didn't have Amazon here in the United States. We had Amazon, but they were mostly selling books and things. And now, 10 years later, if you live in a city in the United States, you don't have to own a car. You can use transit. You can use Uber and Lyft and ride sharing. You can get on an electric bicycle. You can get on a scooter. And so I would say that I'm very excited about what 10 years from now looks like. I think what is incredibly important for places like Brazil and the United States is we need to invest in transit, because you can't just put everybody in a ride share. You need rail and buses to carry large groups of people. We want to make sure we do that safely in this post-pandemic world. But I would say that in 10 years, you're going to see less pollution because cars will be electrified. You're going to see less crashes and more safety because cars will be connected. And if we have problems with distracted drivers, drowsy drivers, or drunk drivers, the technology will be able to account for that. And you're going to see much more intelligent cities where instead of just cars and trucks sort of driving all over the place, we're going to be able to use technology to better understand the origins and destinations of our people and goods so that we're better able to map it. And also in 10 years, we're going to see this concept of urban air mobility starting to work in. So it's this fourth dimension of transportation that we're going to need to plan for. That's my sense of what 10 years looks like from now.
Shailin, I would like to thank you very much for having spent some of your time with us, and thank you for your contact. And I hope that very soon you will be able to visit physically here and to get to know our problems close by and talk about the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and please have a wonderful rest of your conference. Bye-bye.
Very well. So today we come to the end of our lives, but you can still see them anytime you like in www.abx.com.vc. So you will have access to podcasts, ebooks, videos, etc., whatever you wish. So this is ABX. We come to the end of this morning session. We'll have some more tomorrow. We will talk about the 5.0 society. And I now invite Paula Braga to close the session. Thank you, Pedro. It was a great morning this morning. We have a meeting on the agenda tomorrow and Friday. Tomorrow we will talk about the quality of IQMX, and on Friday we will talk about leadership. You cannot possibly miss it. We have lots of content for the rest of the week. If you missed something, do as Pedro told you, go to our site so you can consume all the material we generated so far. We have all the takeaways there, such as podcasts and videos and things. So don't miss it. I have the function here once again to draw a raffle here on 2 books. It's a lottery, really. The winners of the books today are Dado Guion and Lucas Sabino. I congratulate you. Our production will be in contact with you, and I will meet you again tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I will meet you throughout the day in our platform at ABX. Don't forget, see you tomorrow.
Driverless cars, connected services, new sharing concepts. The automotive industry is in the midst of change. The Internet of Things is opening up a whole new world of possibilities that will push the boundaries of mobility. But what will the future really look like on the roads? One thing is for certain. New technologies are going to revolutionize today's mobility. They will turn the journey into a digitally enhanced experience and connect the vehicle to its surroundings. With Bosch, connected mobility is becoming a reality, more efficient, safer, and more comfortable and convenient.
exterior automotive parts can be a slow process that requires the use of a noxious chemical adhesion promoter. However, our Tesa ACX primerless line of high-performance double-sided acrylic foam tapes eliminates the need for primers. These tapes quickly achieve a high level of strength and provide the thermal expansion characteristics needed when mounting side moldings, decorative trims, emblems, and other exterior attachment parts. To learn more about the benefits and cost savings of using our Tesa ACX Plus primerless line on difficult-to-bond substrates such as polypropylene EPDM, TPO, and TPE, visit tesatape.com.
Itaú Veículos. Soluções completas, ferramentas modernas, alta tecnologia. Reconhecimento facial, mais segurança e agilidade na compra e venda de veículos. Chat na plataforma digital. Comunicação mais fácil entre a concessionária e nosso time. Open Banking. União entre plataformas e parceiros. Inteligência artificial. Essencial na captura e gestão de leads. Soluções de mobilidade. Com a ConnectCar, seu cliente vai mais longe. Olhamos para o futuro. Queremos sempre mais. Vamos juntos? Itaú Veículos. Nosso negócio é viabilizar o seu.